And my father was telling Tesla that she's complaining. And he says, "Your husband, my nephew, is a man of genius and learning who is straining every fiber to carry out successfully some of his ideas, which will bring him fame and fortune." My mother said offline, when it came to Nobel Prize, my father said he would like Nobel Prize, but my mother said she'd like the $1 million that goes with it better. And it says, "Surely you must be proud of him, for what he has is worth far more than millions and a title." That's what got my mother thinking about that. And so on and so forth. So you can have a copy of this. I'm not going to bother getting the original around here because I keep that separately. Also, I'm giving you 2 copies of the cover of Time magazine. 1 copy for you and 1 copy for your teacher, who is your boss for the history project. And you can, of course, make copies of everything else and give to her. This is the letter to Garrett. His name is Garrett, from Fontana, California. You see, last paragraph. "Thank your dad for turning you on to Tesla. Also some pointers as to your project text. Review your syntax. Your construction leaves a lot to be desired." Then parentheses, it says, "Check with your teacher to see what she has to say about it." And then I say, and don't call famous people or grown-ups guys. Is this what the modern age is coming to? That's really.
My name is Greg Spielman, and I am a student at Mount View Middle School. For my History Day project, I am creating a documentary on Nikola Tesla. Mr. Terbo, could you tell who you are, what you do, and what is your relationship with Nikola Tesla?
All right, Greg, my name is William Terbo, and I have to explain why my name is Terbo rather than Trebojevic or Tesla. My father's name is Trebojevic. He was a famous inventor as well. But my mother had a profession of her own, and Trebojevic was too difficult, and so for social, we used the name Terbo, and I was born with that. My father was nephew of Nikola Tesla, also a famous inventor, and I am my father's son. And of all those people that have that relationship, my grandmother was Tesla's older sister, and there were only 7 of us at any time, and only 2 of us remain. So this is the closest living relationship you can have.
Can you describe Nikola Tesla? For example, what was his personality like?
Well, you know, Tesla was a very complex person. A person of his background. He never married because I think he meant that, as he told my father, being married and being an inventor are 2 full-time jobs. And so he chose to be inventor only. But his personality, everybody thinks of a person that thought so deeply and created so much would be very introspective. But he had a very good sense of humor also. And he had among his friends Samuel Clemens, who was Mark Twain, among other people. But I know from my own father that he had a good sense of humor, because my father used to tell stories from his childhood which was identical to the childhood of Tesla. And he would be just convulsed with laughter. And so I'm sure that Tesla was telling these same stories and laughing very heartily.
Did he have any hobbies as a child?
I don't believe that Tesla really had any hobbies. He was thinking, as a child, he was thinking very much, working toward a future profession as a scientist or inventor. And I don't believe that he had much in the way of hobbies, because, you know, in those days, life was tough. It may sound different today, but life was tough then. And when your father is a priest in the Serbian Orthodox Church, you have a lot of responsibilities that are not exactly fun responsibilities.
Okay. Was he curious?
Very curious, very curious. As I said, he had an interest in technology or in science, and he even said himself that he created a little water wheel to run in the creek, thinking ahead as children did even in his day and in his location, thinking of Niagara Falls as something that was a wish for him as a possibility in the future for him to do something about the power from Niagara Falls.
Did his mother influence his inventive thinking?
Tesla's mother was quite an inventive person herself, but she was completely uneducated. In those days, women didn't have an education, and she was the wife of a Serbian Orthodox priest. But yes, she favored Tesla very much because at a particular time, he was going to be a priest himself, and he didn't want to do that. And she took his side and finally persuaded her husband, his father, that maybe a different type of profession would be appropriate.
Did he have any role models that influenced him?
Well, role models as an adult, I think that he probably didn't think of role models because he was the first person to do many of the things that he did. But for people that he respected would be more likely to be famous scientists that preceded him. I know that his regard for Michael Faraday was very good, or for Hertz, other famous inventors. And he did have a chance in later life to give a lecture at the London Academy, which also honored Faraday. And as a part of that celebration, he was able to drink a little whiskey from the same bottle that Michael Faraday had left at the science area.
After he moved to America, did Nikola Tesla ever go back to Serbia?
He returned at least twice for fairly long visits. And one was involved in giving these lectures for the London Academy and for the Paris Academy. And he had a chance to go back to Serbia at that time. He was in Serbia when his mother died, and he was just able to get there before she died, so this was very important to him. And of course he was famous at that time, and so he went back a second time and was again given a great honor and consideration.
Tesla worked for Thomas Edison, but eventually they became rivals. What did he think of Edison?
Well, you know, there's a great story about the battle of the currents between Edison with direct current and Tesla with alternating current. Nikola Tesla was invited to work for Edison from his work that he did in Paris. And he thought that Edison, being so famous, worldwide famous, that he would just be excited to find out about Tesla's work in alternating current. He didn't realize that Edison had other things on his mind, mainly his financial arrangements were really tied up in direct current. So he worked for Edison for a relatively short period of time, less than a year. And while they were completely different in personality, they had a respect for each other because they both recognized that they worked very hard and very effectively, and that they had that particular type of respect. As for the technical ability of Edison, I'm afraid Tesla had a relatively low regard for that.
Why did Nikola Tesla essentially give his patents to George Westinghouse for free?
Well, of course, he didn't give it for free. He gave it for what would be, in today's terms, a really magnificent sum of money. But Nikola Tesla recognized in George Westinghouse the kind of man who was also a technical person, for they had a mutual respect between the two as technical people, but that he recognized that in this capitalistic world that we have at the time, that he needed somebody who could fight with the best, and George Westinghouse was that man. So he had a great regard for George Westinghouse. he had such a regard for him that he not only sold his patents to Westinghouse for what, as I say, was a magnificent amount of money at the time, but that Westinghouse offered him a royalty. And it was later when Westinghouse ran into difficulty, financial difficulty, that the story is, whether it is 100% true or not, is that Tesla said, if you need the money, I'll tear up my royalty check, or my royalty arrangement, because George Westinghouse did get in financial difficulties.
Nikola Tesla's laboratory burnt down in 1895. How do you think this affected his further research?
This was a disaster for Tesla, because he had a lot of his papers and his models and his work involved in that fire. It really did, it essentially took maybe a year or two of his productive life away, because he had to simply recreate the things that he had before. So it was an enormous difficulty for him, and in having some of the memorabilia of Tesla, so much of the memorabilia of early inventions would have been so valuable today, were lost in this fire. So it was, for him, a great tragedy, but it was only fire, it wasn't life.
Why did Nikola Tesla invent? In other words, what was his motivation?
Tesla is, as being one of the foundations of a certain area in science, it's so difficult to say, why did he invent? No, he had an image of what the future was, and he invented something to reach that future. He didn't, it was compelling for him.
Where did Nikola Tesla get some of his ideas?
Again, I think that he saw a need and he fulfilled the need. I don't think a person who is inventing something can ever identify where the idea came from. It's something that he would see in his head, imagine what would be appropriate. For instance, in his contributions for alternating current, when he was in school, they didn't know about alternating current. They knew about it, but they didn't know what it could do. And they were showing generators that made static electricity or something. And he looked at that and said, my goodness, that is pretty not very effective way to do it. And he saw that if I could make a change in that would work out, this would be a great step forward. So if that was a reason for getting an idea, that would be one.
Tesla experienced the burning of his lab and numerous financial setbacks. Did he ever get discouraged when inventing?
He never got discouraged. Nikola Tesla never got discouraged from inventing, but he was an inventor, and he came from a background, a clerical, religious background, in which business was not ever mentioned. It was not a part of his personality. So he was a relatively poor businessman, and he should have made a great fortune, and he had his hands on a great fortune. But as he said many times, he says that, as he told my father, he says, I'll never be rich because I can shovel the money out the window faster than it can come in the door. So his financial arrangements were generally rather poor, and yes, he was discouraged by that, considering that in later life he saw what he had created and saw that other people were profiting.
During the current war, Edison electrocuted all types of animals to portray alternating current as a deadly current. He also supported the use of the electric chair. Do you know how Nikola Tesla felt about this?
Concerning the battle of the currents, which I think is probably the best way to explain this difference between Edison and not only Nikola Tesla, but Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, that Tesla was simply appalled at this way that Edison was portraying the relative danger, when he knew, as a scientist, he knew that there was as much danger in direct current as in alternating current. So he was appalled at this political way of trying to put it. I think that this activity that is associated with Edison had a very poor effect on Edison's reputation.
When Marconi was originally awarded the patent for inventing radio, Nikola Tesla joked about Marconi using 17 of his patents. How did Nikola Tesla feel about Marconi?
Well, you know, we've talked about the relation between Edison and Tesla, which was a mutual respect. He had a respect for Marconi also, who was a very good businessman, but he knew from the moment that Marconi's work in radio started that he was using patents that had already been issued to Tesla. So he had a very mixed feeling with Marconi, and actually Marconi won the Nobel Prize in 1909. This really irritated Nikola Tesla because that Nobel Prize belonged to Tesla. In 1912, he actually took Marconi to court and sued him on these patent arrangements. And unfortunately, Tesla lost because Tesla kept many things in his head and not as much on paper as he should have. This was not favorably thought by Tesla. He didn't like that. But in the end, Marconi's patents were overturned in favor of Tesla and other pioneers in earlier part of radio. But the principal patents are Tesla's for radio.
Do you remember any stories told throughout the family about Nikola Tesla?
You know, my father knew Tesla very well and met with him many times and corresponded with him regularly, but he visited Detroit, where my family was located, and there are always lots of stories. And one quick story that I can tell is that when Tesla came to town, to Detroit, my father took him to the most luxurious hotel in Detroit for lunch, and my father, being Serbian by background, when they arrived at the restaurant, there was a cover charge, which in modern terms would be like a $20 a person cover charge. And at this time, and my father said to Tesla, we should maybe wait a moment or two, but Tesla said, no, we're going in. And they sat down, and of course Tesla was so famous at this time that all of the maitre d' of the restaurant, the head waiter, the waiting staff, all were trying to do everything they could do to make Tesla's lunch at this place the most effective. But Tesla only ordered a bowl, a chafing dish with a fire underneath, and milk, and some bread, and he put bread in the milk and ate. My father ate a steak, I think, but but Tesla ate bread and milk.
What do you think was his most important achievement or invention?
Nikola Tesla has more than one lifetime worth of inventions to his credit. 3 are of particular interest. His invention of not only the rotating magnetic motor and the long-distance transmission of power, which is the foundation of alternating current, and his idea of sympathetically tuned radio, which is the foundation of radio, and the Tesla coil. I differentiate Nikola Tesla from other independent inventors is that none has 2 of these important inventions, radio and alternating current. And for any other inventor, a life's work would have been just the Tesla coil. So those 3 items. Why is the Tesla coil, I mentioned the Tesla coil specifically, is because it is used so widely in modern modern technology. Every automobile has a Tesla coil in it. They don't call it a Tesla coil, they just call it a coil that raises the battery voltage to the spark voltage needed for internal combustion engine. And every television set takes your low voltage from the house circuit and pumps it up to the kind of voltage you need for television. Those all require the Tesla coil. Yet I don't consider the Tesla coil to be his main inventions. For anybody else, a lifetime of achievement would be in that one invention, but for Tesla, two main inventions.
Nikola Tesla is credited with inventing the world's electric power distribution system as well as radio. He also invented numerous other things. Why isn't he more well known?
The question, of course, is how do you gain lasting fame? And one of the principal ways is to have your name attached to something that is lasting in its effect. The best example is to have a company with your name, a very successful company with your name. Take, for instance, George Westinghouse. His family says quite clearly that Westinghouse isn't as respected as he should have been, but Westinghouse Corporation still exists and his name is in everybody's mouth. Edison also has things with his name on it, and so does Marconi. Only Tesla does not have a company bearing his name. And the one item that he has that does bear his name is the Tesla coil, which gives it some prominence that, in a technical sense, is probably not as important as his principal inventions.
How did Nikola Tesla shape today's American lifestyle?
I don't think there's a person that we respect now that has the influence that Nikola Tesla had on our present life. He changed the whole way of electricity being used, how it's generated, how it's distributed. It removed from the regular work of people a energy that was able to replace pure physical energy. So the ability of alternating current has a lot to do with the better lifestyle that we have. A better lifestyle means what does his radio have to do? Because radio and television are a way that people spend the extra free time that they have because of his electrical inventions. That Tesla is associated with radio is very important for the way that we spend our free time. And his coil, as I say, you would have difficulty starting your car if you didn't have a Tesla coil in the car. So all of these things are so intimately involved in the way modern society works from a technical background, and those things are due to Nikola Tesla.
Thank you for letting me interview you. I had a pleasure.
Okay, that's very good, and I think you did.
My name is Greg Spielman, and I am a student at Mount View Middle School. For my History Day project, I am doing a documentary on Nikola Tesla. Okay, this is Mr. Turbo. Could you tell who you are, what you...
I think we better just
Do
run
that.
that.
Hello, my name is Greg Spielman, and I'm doing a documentary for my History Day project. Could you tell? My name is Greg Spielman, and I am a student at Mount View Middle School. For my History Day project, I am researching Nikola Tesla. This is Mr. Terbo. Could you tell who you are, what you do, and what is your relationship with Nikola Tesla?
Yes, Greg. My relationship to Nikola Tesla is that my grandmother was Tesla's elder sister, Angelina. I have been involved in discussing Tesla. He's a member of our family. My father was a very famous inventor and the nephew of Nikola Tesla, and so I've had a direct connection. In Tesla's family background, he was a single man, so he never had any children. there were only 7 of us at any time that had the relationship that I have, and only my elder cousin in Chicago and myself remain of that group. This is the closest relationship you can have to Nikola Tesla.
Can you describe Nikola Tesla? What was his personality like?
Well, Nikola Tesla is, of course, a very complex person, because you can see by all his accomplishments. But a person that accomplished so much you'd think would be a very introspective type of person, maybe without an outgoing personality. But I believe that Tesla had a very good sense of humor. I can match that from my father, who had the exact same background, the same upbringing, and the same area of the country. And my father would tell stories from his childhood and laugh uproariously. And I'm sure Tesla was telling the same stories and laughing just as well.
Nikola Tesla was supposedly born at the stroke of midnight during a thunderstorm. Is this true?
As we understand it, is true, and this has always been a little difficulty for Tesla in determining which day of the calendar should be his birthday. Should it be the evening before the storm, or the evening or the morning after the storm? So this is a true story.
Did he have any hobbies as a child?
I don't believe that Nikola Tesla had hobbies as we think of them today. He certainly had a pet goose that he liked, that followed him around, that he was always interested in things. But as hobbies that we think of today, he lived in a different era. And in those days, there was a lot of work to do and not a lot of time for hobbies.
Was he curious?
I believe that any person of a mind like Tesla has to have an inbred curiosity. As Tesla said even later in his life, that he never thought of himself as fully educated, because he still had a curiosity to know what else was there to learn.
Did he have any role models that influenced him?
Everybody has some role models that that influence them very much, and of course he had his parents as very important role models, because his father was a Serbian Orthodox priest, and his mother was a very inventive person herself, not all that well educated, but those were probably the principal influences that he had, along with his 3 sisters. But I don't think that anybody in the background in which Tesla was brought up, a sort of rural background, that there was anybody that really overly influenced him in a way that would have an influence on his professional career.
After he moved to America, did Nikola Tesla ever go back to Serbia?
Nikola Tesla came to the United States when he was 28 years old. He was at that time professionally very secure, but he had not yet made any of his great inventions. He made those inventions in America. Within 10 years of the time he arrived in America, he became world famous because of his work on alternating current. So yes, he did go back to Europe and visited Serbia twice. He went one time to deliver lectures at the Royal Academy in London and the similar academy in Paris, and took the time to go to Serbia, where just fortunately he was there when his mother, who was a great influence on him, when his mother died.
Tesla worked for Thomas Edison, but eventually they became rivals. What did he think of Edison?
Well, Nikola Tesla had a very involved relationship with Thomas Edison. He was recommended by his work from the Edison interests in Paris to come to America and to work for Edison. Tesla thought that Edison, being so famous and being so well associated with electricity, that he would be eager to investigate Tesla's ideas about alternating current. But unfortunately, he didn't realize that Thomas Edison had an agenda of his own, which favored direct current because of investments that he had. And so when he found that Edison was not going to leap at the opportunity to develop alternating current, he decided that it was time to leave. So he worked for Edison for less than a year. Tesla and Edison both had very good regard for each other, not only in their accomplishments but in their work ethics.
Why did Nikola Tesla essentially give his patents to George Westinghouse for free?
When Nikola Tesla determined that his invention of the whole system for alternating current, he recognized that there was a great potential in this. And George Westinghouse also independently was looking for something in alternating current and found that Tesla had the solution to all of his problems. And so there was just a magic partnership that came between the two. He never gave patents for free. He got a very handsome sum of money at the time. He also had, George Westinghouse and Tesla had great respect one for the other, and George Westinghouse, it is said, offered him a royalty on all of the alternating current motors that could be manufactured at the time. What they didn't take into consideration was that a 50 horsepower alternating current was the size of an automobile at the beginning of the time, and later that same size piece of equipment could be 5,000 horsepower. And so the royalty arrangements that might have been arranged between Westinghouse and Tesla became millions of dollars. And Tesla had such a regard for George Westinghouse that when Westinghouse became, his company became financially in danger, that he is said to have taken that contract for royalties and simply torn it up. Of course, I wish that he hadn't, because if he hadn't torn up the contract, I might not be making an interview with you. I might be sitting on my yacht in the Mediterranean.
Nikola Tesla's laboratory burnt down in 1895. How do you think this affected his further research?
There was a fire at Nikola Tesla's laboratory in Manhattan, and it was a tragedy in the respect that so much of the work that he'd been working on, and Tesla was not a person who put down so much on paper, but he had models and thoughts and research that he had done, and so much of that research was damaged or completely destroyed in this time. The effect of the fire in 1895 not only was the loss of a lot of memorabilia and a lot of models of things that he was working on, but it really took about 2 years out of his life to actually bring back to the area that he was working on before. And in a time of very fast moving technology, 2 years is a lot of time. It might have been another great invention might have happened for Tesla in the 2 years that he lost.
Why did Nikola Tesla invent? In other words, what was his motivation?
The question always is that why does a person that is so special as Nikola Tesla, with his powers to invent, for motivation, he really doesn't need a motivation. He sees something that nobody else has seen, and he sees a need for what he required. And the need is the motivation in itself. He saw a need and fulfilled it in his own way.
Where did Nikola Tesla get some of his ideas?
As far as ideas for, I don't know, that's kind
Yeah,
of...
we can cut that out. Go ahead. Go to the next one, bud.
Mm-hmm.
We can cut that out.
Tesla experienced the burning of his lab and numerous financial setbacks. Did he ever get discouraged when inventing?
The question, of course, is that Tesla invented so many important things. Why isn't he so rich? You have to understand, there's a background. Nikola Tesla was the son of a Serbian Orthodox priest. In those days, business was not something that people thought of as well. America is a different country. This is what then was Austria, Austro-Hungary at the time, and so he never had the background in order to be a businessman. And he thought that while he invented so many important things, that he saw that the recognition that he got at one time was so great, but as time went on, that recognition decreased somewhat. So yes, he did get discouraged. He got discouraged on two accounts: that he had so many new ideas, and as he always explained, he said that I have new ideas, but they're all very expensive ideas. And if you don't have the financial ability to express those ideas, you cannot possibly bring them to fruition.
During the current war, Edison electrocuted all types of animals to portray AC as a deadly current. He also supported the use of the electric chair. Do you know how Nikola Tesla felt about this?
I guess the question now is associated with the great battle of the currents between Edison with direct current and Tesla and Westinghouse with alternating current. And this was a very rough battle, particularly on the background of Edison, who used every possibility he could to discredit alternating current. Why? Because Edison had financial interests in direct current and wanted to protect those financial interests. But in the idea that he was making exhibits of electrocuting cats and dogs and even an elephant, this was just abhorrent to Tesla. Tesla was a peaceable type of person, and he couldn't believe that there would be such, in a person that he respected in the name of Edison, that would stoop to this low type of publicity. So Tesla was just very upset about the whole thing, and as it was very lucky because he had George Westinghouse working with him, who did the best he could to negate those bad ideas.
Yeah.
What was the mark?
Getcha.
When Marconi was originally awarded the patent for inventing radio, Nikola Tesla joked about Marconi using 17 of his patents. What did Tesla think about Marconi?
What was the relationship between Marconi and Tesla? Now, Tesla knew of Marconi and actually had been in contact with him in many ways. But among all of the other scientists that were involved, he had a difficulty with Marconi in that Marconi essentially assumed the invention of radio, which was based on Tesla's patents. This bothered Tesla a great deal. It was compounded by Marconi winning the Nobel Prize in 1909 for the radio, a prize that should have been awarded to Tesla. And in 1912, Tesla actually sued Marconi to overturn these patents. He lost that case through a technicality, but ultimately those patents were overturned, and the fundamental invention of the radio rests in the largest part with Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla is credited with inventing the world's electrical power distribution system, as well as radio. He also invented numerous other things. Why isn't he more well known?
The question of why is Tesla known so little by people today? Of course, when he was famous, world famous, he was one of the most famous people in the world. His name was known everywhere in the world. But you know, the time moves on. The way to protect your name over a long period of time is through some institution that maintains your name. And a normal type of institution is a company that bears your name. You see that Thomas Edison is known because there are Edison companies. George Westinghouse is known because there are Westinghouse companies. But there is no company with the name Tesla associated with it. One of the few things that brings Tesla's name to the normal scientific community is his invention of the Tesla coil. Of his inventions, the Tesla coil is much less important than his alternating current or his radio, but it does have his name, and that is known now in one manner to keep his name alive.
How did Nikola Tesla shape today's American lifestyle?
Of all the famous inventors of his era, the independent inventors, I don't think there is a single person that has had a greater influence on our modern lifestyle than Nikola Tesla. His invention of the alternating current changed the way construction and manufacturing was made. It brought the great energy of electricity to an area where physical energy had to be used in most cases. It relieved people of the drudgery of hard labor by bringing electricity. So one of the influences of Tesla is that he freed people to have more free time. His invention of radio is essentially, what do people do with their free time? They have a chance now to enjoy radio or television or some similar media like that. So he's had a great influence on how free time is spent. And the other invention that we say is the Tesla coil. It is such an integral part of almost every electrical device in modern society. Without a Tesla coil, the automobile would be very difficult to run. Without a Tesla coil, you wouldn't be able to have a television or another thing. Every place where you have to take low voltage current and raise it to high voltage to operate electronic devices or things of that nature are all involved in that. And Tesla wasn't limited only in that. He had many other inventions. But when you start talking about inventions, maybe it's best just to concentrate on those particular ones because they are so involved in our modern life.
Mr. Turbo, ready?
Mr. Turbo, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Certainly. It's a special background because Nikola Tesla is such a famous inventor. My father also, his nephew, was a very famous inventor. Every automobile on the road has my father's inventions in it. So it was not really a question of what I was going to do as an adult, but what engineering school would I go to? So I, of course, went to engineering school and I became an engineer. As soon as I had a chance to leave Detroit, I went to Los Angeles and became involved in the space business and missile business. I had a principal part of my professional career there, and because I knew something about satellites, I was brought to the East Coast when a company had a satellite program and it needed some people to help them mechanize that program, and that's how I came east. As far as my connection with Tesla, he was just simply my father's uncle, and of course I knew who he was, but I never made any announcement of it. For instance, when I went to university, they mentioned Tesla for a minute and a half, but when I went to gear design, where my father is the most famous person in gear design, I had to stand up and be acknowledged by the other students and the professor as being my father's son. I was very fortunate because I detested gear design. It's so boring that you can't believe it, but thank goodness I got a courtesy grade from the professor. Otherwise he would have thrown me out. As far as things that I've done in my career, I was involved in relatively well-known missile programs, space programs. I had a company doing cryogenic insulation systems, and if you look at a missile, you'll see this gold foil on some of the things. That generally is a product that I was involved in. In the East, I changed my professional background from missiles to international telecommunications, doing mostly market research and things of that nature. And so I can say that even though I was educated as an engineer, I didn't use a great deal of it. I think I inherited from my mother some of her business savvy, while my father was so involved in technology.
Okay, great. Okay, do you want to thank Mr. Turbo and Tate?
Alright, so
It's okay. Say thank you. Oh.
Think of something you're going
Yeah.
to say, and then,
yeah.
then
I'd like to thank you.
I'd like to thank you for allowing me to interview.
speak it.
Yeah,
put
you get
it-
to speak
put it
really
in-
loud.
Put it into.
Put some enthusiasm there, but
I was going to say,
Yeah.
frame it in a couple of sentences, and
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
are sentences, and then project. So when you practice, project, and
Yeah.
then you do it.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Turbo, for allowing me to interview you. Thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure interviewing you.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and I trust that you'll have great success with your project.
Thank you.
thank you.